I can't be with you this evening in your sharing and your caring for those lost and for your resistance against all harm and hurt. There is no room for intolerance. There is no room for violence. There is no room for disrespect of difference. So I'm going to read 3 poems, 3 Villanelles, an old French form of poetry that compacts language. Each of the Villanelles is a memory for those lost, for those murdered, and each Villanelle is a reclaiming of the rights of peace, the rights to follow whichever faith you have, and to live your lives, all of you, all of us, unhindered and untrammeled by the bigotry and violence of others. The first one's called A Villanelle Silence, a reclaiming, and it's for those murdered in the Christchurch mosques. For those who knew each name as it spoke a person, for those who know each person by names they now hear, we come together in a silence of prayer that stretches horizons. What we share is the resistance to violence, the negation of hatred and prejudice, each word to be felt and not lost in the familiar, for those who knew each name as it spoke a person. As light finds its way through the veins of the leaf, season meets season in the growth of the sacred, an open space where we come together in a silence of prayer that stretches horizons. To walk together, walk past with or without recognition, but to walk past with sacred respect, the shape of the living figure, for those who knew each name as it spoke a person. Never forget, and always let light fall on the smallest portion of neglect, those little incidents we forget, the smallest slights that adhere. Rather, we come together in a silence of prayer that stretches horizons. But those who kill cannot undo the life of the spirit. They might imagine there are those who will hate along with them, but they are wrong, cannot plant fear. And we come together in a silence of prayer that stretches horizons for those who knew each name as it spoke a person. The second Villanelle was written very recently and very sadly again. And this one's called The Villanelle of the Grasses. And it's for the victims of the bombings in Sri Lanka, Easter 2019. I must say, when I was writing this, in a distant neighbour's paddock, I could hear a lamb calling for its mother. And instead came the reply of a dog from across the valley. And it wasn't the dog being aggressive, though. It was reacting strongly to the sort of fierce cry of the lamb. It was almost like a bark in empathy. So the lamb and the dog were communing a kind of understanding and distress. It was very strange. It kind of filled me with hope in a way. Villanelle of the Grasses. The crepitation of grass seeds sprouting is the stir of green emanation. That's the underwriting of a grassland rousing itself from sleep, just as a lamb calls fiercely for its mother, rousing the dog across the ravine. It's an unbearable weight to bring to bear on the ground as the sudden chatter of familiarity, the cooperation of seeds, their go now, forms its inland neap. The crepitation of grass seed sprouting is the blur of green emanation. It's tense knowing the grass is coming, programmed in a rerun of last year, though this year's not the same. This summoning from the not so deep, just as a lamb calls fiercely for its mother, rousing the dog across the ravine. We walk roughly, then suddenly soft as news of a further extermination of people at prayer turns the freshly risen grass back to the hurt soil's grip. The crepitation of grass seed sprouting is the blur of green emanation. The fear of who might possess the last breath. Who knows the seen and unseen? The sounds that reverberates after the grass retreats from its hope, just as a lamb calls fiercely for its mother, rousing the dog across the ravine. But faith is woven through faith, a spirit path through grass's patterns of grass, and the intricacies of call and response, of the grass's sudden leap, just as a lamb calls fiercely for its mother, rousing the dog across the ravine. The crepitation of grass seed sprouting the stir of green emanation. And finally, because I think that in our mourning we have to never let the violent and the violent bigots, the haters, any space to articulate or try to articulate their hatred. And when the white supremacists co-opt Dylan Thomas's great poem, his great Villanelle, "Do Not Go Gentle Into That Good Night," which is a poem about life, not about death. It's a poem about keep going. I am appalled. So I wrote this poem. It's called "Free Villanelle Against White Supremacists Co-opting Dylan Thomas's Do Not Go Gentle Into That Good Night." Lines taken out of context can make darkness burn for those who want to burn the world, but darkness is their slow burn, white lies their eruption. And when leaflets fostering discrimination appear outside a wheatbelt supermarket, they gloss lines taken out of context and make a darkness burn. But what most disturbs is that such leaflets remain or are browsed as the town broods under a glaze of tolerance. Is it a slow burn before white lies trigger an eruption? We share breath and relish the health to rise each day in turn, each day shared in sameness and difference. But lines taken out of context can make darkness burn. Every word of intolerance sold as warning is the crimson shade of the day-to-day accretion of a rage that is not the rage for existence, a slow burn, white lies their corruption. Let words of life that urge a life continue to be a lexicon of day and night, light and dark, of overlaps in time's ingress. Lines taken out of context can make darkness burn. A slow burn, white lies their corruption. So I leave you, and together, in solidarity, we have strength, peace, non-violent reaction, and not letting the hatred of the bigots overwhelm us is surely the key. We are all part of it. All of us have to play a role in stopping the aggression and stopping the intolerance. Let's speak. And I speak from here out in the bush, but I'm with you tonight.